Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Tuesday edition here of Point of View. And just a minute, I want to start talking about wildfires and how these wildfires are supposedly the result of this administration, this president. And if you keep voting in Republicans, we'll keep having wildfires. But we'll try to explain all that in just a minute. In just a few minutes, we'll also be talking with Representative Candy Noble, represents the 89th District in Texas. And so we'll be talking about some of the issues that are relevant to her. That certainly will be everything from education to the issue of supporting the police. Back the blue. Then in the next hour, Michael Brown will be with us. We've quoted him before, but this is the first time we'll have him on because he has been one of those writing about Black Lives Matter in terms of course, not only what we've mentioned in previous interviews, the Marxist orientation of some of the founders, but he's also written about Black Lives Matter and witchcraft. And then because of that, has even had people push back against him on some of these issues. So we've posted some of his articles on that. Also, whether or not Black Lives Matter will speak out against the shooting of the Los Angeles sheriff deputy. So we've got a lot to cover right there. And then a little bit later, we will also then spend some time talking with our friend Dinesh D'Souza, author of the book United States of Socialism, new movie coming out, Trump Card. I think you're going to really benefit from all of those pieces of information as well. And of course, all of this takes place during this theme this week, Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times, and Truth Team 2020. And we encourage you to get as much information as you can by going to the website, pointofview.net. Of course, you can also give us a call, 800-347-5151. Let me get to the wildfires for just a few minutes. And if you are maybe watching Twitter, I've got this one from Tom Steyer. The only solution we have to stop California wildfires is electing Joe Biden. Now, Tom Steyer's pretty smart. He was presidential candidate, built a business. I don't really think he believes that, but, you know, that's what he is saying. Or, as some people are saying, we have wildfires. This is due to climate change. Climate change is caused by electing Republicans. Elect Democrats, and climate change and wildfires will go away. Again, people don't believe that. And as we've said on this program so many times, don't look at what people say, look at what they do. If you really believe that, then you would absolutely suggest that any Republican should not be in office. If you're really convinced, for example, that climate change is a problem, then maybe you should not be the people traveling around as much as you do. Because whether it's Tom Steyer, whether it's Al Gore, whether it's Nancy Pelosi, whether it's Barack Obama, whatever it is, they warn us about the danger of climate change and then have carbon footprints much, much larger than what you have or I have. Another example I've used before is Barack Obama has told us that because we elected Donald Trump, the oceans are going to start rising again. But then don't look at what he says, look at what he does. He purchased a $12 million estate in Massachusetts. And that's right there on the water. And if indeed you're convinced that the waters are going to rise and the ocean levels are going to rise, you just bought land that's going to be underwater. Again, Martha's Vineyard is not going to be underwater, and they don't believe it. And in some respects, look at what they do, not what they say. But I think it's kind of interesting because, and I want to give credit to Jim Garrity, he pointed out that there was a very good piece that came out in ProPublica, and I've got it. It has the title, "They Know How to Prevent Megafires. Why Won't Anybody Listen?" And this is a very good and detailed journalistic look at why there are these mega fires. And it was done back in August, back before maybe somebody sent out a memo saying, blame all the fires on climate change, blame climate change on Donald Trump. And so they were actually doing journalism without the bias that I'm sure is taking place right now. And if I can quote from it for just a minute, some of these individuals that are talking about the need for controlled burnings are saying that there has been such an attempt to have overzealous fire suppression that then when wind blows down a power line or lightning strikes dry grass, an inferno ensues, they say. And they had been talking to the U.S. Forest Service, California state agencies about doing some prescribed and managed burns because this would then prevent these mega fires from taking place. They go on and even remind us that academics believe that between 4 million and 11 million acres burned each year in prehistoric California. And we also know, having grown up in California, that sometimes the Indians would set some fires because this would then bring back more wildlife and deer and a variety of other things. But of course, there has been so much of an opposition to this for a couple of reasons. First of all, not in my backyard. NIMBY, if you've ever heard it before. Nobody really wants smoke in their backyard, even if it's a controlled burn. Number two, liability, because every once in a while a controlled burn can go wrong. And so nobody wants to take the chance that a controlled burn goes too far. But probably the biggest reason, and something we've talked about here on the program so often, is the suspicion from environmentalists that this would be used to actually exploit the land. And so there are some really good arguments being used in this article. And if nothing else, I just thought I would spend a moment today talking about this because you're over the next couple of days and perhaps weeks hear that the reason we have these mega burns is due to the fact that we have climate change. And since we have climate change taking place, you've got to elect Democrats. You've got to elect certainly Joe Biden, and you've got to defeat all the Republicans, and in particular, Donald Trump. And so just wanted to give you a viewpoint that maybe you've never heard before in the mainstream media. That's what we do every day here on Point of View. Well, as we come to a break, let me just mention that we're in the midst of Truth Team 2020. In just a minute, we're going to have Candy Noble in studio with us, and we're going to spend some time talking with her about some of the issues addressing our nation, but in particular addressed in the state of Texas. I think that's going to be a great opportunity to spend some time talking with her. But as you know, during this Truth Team week, we really challenge you to consider what you might do to support this ministry. And we do have a match on the table. So yesterday we had a goal of trying to raise about $8,000. We fell short. And maybe some of you are waiting to see whether or not we would have a match on the table, and we do. So now's the time to act, because by the end of 3 hours, maybe the match will have gone away. So if you want your dollars to be matched right now, now is the time to make that phone call. 800-347-5151, or of course, pointofview.net. Just received our latest flash drive. This one includes all the material that was on the flash drive back in the spring, with all the new material on education, evangelism, and a variety of others. Has a video clip that I've put in there giving you an analysis of the 2020 elections, and that's something we make available for those of you that decide to join us at the Truth Team level. That's $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. And that's one of the benefits you get. In addition, of course, to this, you also receive the Outlook magazine. And those of you that join at the higher level, $50 a month, of course, we also make available these booklets, which we'll talk about more in just a few minutes. But I need to take a break, and we are privileged to have in studio with us today Representative Candy Noble. And it is going to be a great conversation with her. And, of course, during that conversation, if you'd like to ask a question, make a phone call, you can do that as well. That will be the call-in number, which I'll give in just a minute. But the number to call right now is 800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
During this presidential election, we will likely hear pundits talking about flipping courts. Will a re-elected President Trump continue flipping courts, or will a President Biden be able to flip courts back? When Trump took office, Democratic appointees had a majority in 9 circuit courts. By contrast, Republican appointees only had a majority in 4 circuit courts. It's also worth mentioning that judges appointed by Republican presidents don't always render a conservative opinion, while nearly all judges appointed by Democratic presidents do render a liberal opinion. In the last few years, President Trump has managed to flip 3 more circuit courts. Those would be the 3rd Circuit Court of Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, the 11th Circuit Court of Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, and the 2nd Circuit Court of New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. If President Trump is reelected, it is likely he would be able to appoint judges that would eventually flip other circuit courts. That would include the 4th Circuit Court of Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the Carolinas, and the 9th Circuit Court of California and other western states. It is likely that many judges are waiting to see how the election turns out before deciding whether they might take senior status and retire. This allows judges to retire with their current salary, which they can receive even if they join a law firm for an additional salary. A President Biden, along with a Vice President Harris, would want to flip these circuit courts back to where they were when President Obama left office. They would want to push through nominees that would be very different from the ones put forward by the Trump administration over these last few years. The most lasting legacy of a president is who he puts on the court. This presidential election will determine which way these courts flip. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Back once again, let me just mention that in the next hour, we're going to have Dinesh D'Souza with us, and then we'll have Michael Brown, but we are privileged to have in studio with us today, so you can watch online as well. Candy Noble, who, of course, as we have talked about many times before, is just finishing off her first term as the Texas House of Representatives, representing the House District 89, served on the board of the Texas Conservative Coalition, the Texas Conservative Coalition Research Institute, served on a number of committees, spent entirely too much time sometimes in Austin listening to some of these long discussions and all the rest. An individual graduated from Hardin-Simmons University in education, and they came and brought you back and had you speak, didn't they?
They did. I got to speak at commencement this year. It was quite an honor. I never dreamed that would happen when I was sitting out in those seats, and here I am. I actually recently got voted in on the Board of Trustees, so I'm pretty excited to serve my alma mater that way.
I might just mention we do have a link to your website because, of course, you were running for re-election, so I wanted to mention that. We also have information that links to some of the other things that you've done, and if they follow you on Facebook, as I do, and Instagram and things like that, I learn a little bit more. But let's start with the subject of education. The big issue, which you're going to have to face if you're reelected, is how to pay for this, because the very significant part of the Texas budget is education. But I've been paying attention to the decreased number of revenues from sales tax, and oil and gas isn't doing as well as it will be. So you're going to be facing some challenges you've never thought about before.
What a lot of people don't realize is that the state of Texas, a year ago in 2019, got more than $38 million every 24 hours from oil and gas revenues. That was into our coffers. And as we know, we kind of had the perfect storm between the COVID and the dip in the oil and gas industry. So we are going to have a significant challenge when we go into session. It is in our Texas Constitution that we do provide education for our school children. And so that is an important priority to the founders of Texas, and it continues to be a priority of mine.
Well, you will face a challenge that I wish the national government did, because tomorrow we're going to have Van Taylor here, and he will remind us that you can just keep spending more than you take in. But in the state of Texas, you have to balance a budget, and it seems to me that you're going to have some other people, maybe on the other side of the aisle, that are either going to want to borrow from the rainy day fund or increase taxes, or both. So in some respects, you're going to have a real challenge, aren't you?
That's exactly right. And that's when I mentioned oil and gas, that's where that revenue in the rainy day fund comes from. And so it's not an unlimited resource for us, as some people seem to think it is for us. It's more than 50% of our state budget does go to education, and that is important.
Right.
More and more, the human services, the Medicaid expansion kind of costs are the Pac-Man that's eating the Texas budget more and more. So it's going to be, I've been telling everyone, it's going to be a session of the answer is going to be no.
Yes.
It's going to be no for a lot of things that we would have been on our wish list in the past. It's time for us to, just like we are in our houses around the kitchen table, tightening our belts and seeing, is this the year we buy a new car? No. This is the year that we make do with what we've got, and it will be hard to fulfill the promises that we've already made in the last budget with the shortfall we have. But it's going to be important that we cut as much government red tape, let businesses get back doing their job, so that the economy can recover and we can have that Texas miracle that we've experienced for so long.
If nothing else, this is why we need a mom and a grandmom in there, because you had 3 kids and 8 grandkids, and you know how to say no.
I do know how to say no.
We're going to need a little bit more of that. Last week, when we were talking about the State Board of Education, they have what are called the TEKS, and we tried to explain that last week, and I think we did a pretty good job. And we've talked about it both in the science area, Dr. Ray Bolin, and we also had Lori Kirkendall here, and they had testified before the State Board of Education. And there's been this constant attempt to try to get all sorts of LGBTQ things in here, try to get abortion in here. And the State Board has done, I think, a pretty good job of holding the line according to what the law requires. But if nothing else, Candy, I think it illustrates only so well that people pay attention to who's on the top of the ballot and they don't go all the way back down. And my argument is that this year, I think people learned, my best example is people in Dallas, for example, probably couldn't have told you 6 months ago who the county judge is.
That's true.
They probably know who Clay Jenkins is. You and I, of course, know the county judge in Collin County, Chris Hill, but a lot of people couldn't as well. But you begin to realize that further down on that ballot, people are making decisions about your life. And the State Board of Education, I find a lot of people don't even know anything about that. But what's the relationship, if you can help us out for a minute, between your job and the State Board of Education? Because you are certainly focusing on education, but they have even a primary and significant role, don't they?
Absolutely. It's really important that we have men and women that are focused on what's best for our children, that serve in positions, every position of government. You know, this time in November, we're actually going to have all the way down to local school boards and city councils on those ballots as well on November 3rd. So when we elect someone to make those decisions on our behalf, which is what we're doing in a representative republic, that we need to make sure that they share our values, not that they have a flashy sign or a name that appeals to us. It's really incumbent upon us to make sure that they share our values and that they have a vision for the future that's best for our kids. And, you know, wow, we have really had to hold that line in Texas for a long time, and it's getting harder and harder to do so. And so if everyone can really make sure about who you're voting for, that they would go ahead and trust somebody like Kerby Anderson to help you out on that. But to do your homework and make sure that it's somebody that does share your values.
And another aspect of that, a lot of people might say, I'm not sure I feel good about what's happening in the public schools, or I feel like my public school needs some help. I've noticed this last couple of years when you've been in office, you've had a lot of administrators, principals, teachers, and others come to Austin to spend time talking to you, right?
Absolutely. I have 5 school districts that I represent, and I am blessed with some really outstanding educators in those school districts. I also have a lot of homeschoolers and some private schools that do just a fabulous job of educating their kids. And you know what? Each child, just like they have their own fingerprint, they have their own educational needs. And it's so important that parents have the options to look at where is the best fit for my child.
Yes.
And I love that we have that partnership with our parents in House District 89. And I know that we all wish that for our school children. We don't want anyone to be in a school that's not giving them their best shot at a great future.
Let's talk about your district for just a minute. You live in Lucas, and if you do Greenville Avenue and you go to the east, unfortunately, I live to the west, so I've never
Just
been able
barely.
to vote for you.
It's so sad.
But Kelly Shackelford's in your district, and he talks about you, and I certainly have supported you, even if I certainly can't vote for you. But that's a really interesting district because you have a number of different communities all together, and really a fair amount of diversity within
We do.
that.
We start with old, more established Plano and Allen,
Right.
and then we go all the way out to Nevada, which is rural and developing so quickly. We have all of Lake Lavon, and of course, most people know about South Fork Ranch, or the
Yeah.
old Dallas
Can
fame,
use
is in my district. So we have quite a wide variety, and some of my school districts are really college bound kind of focus, and then others have military and workforce and college bound kind of a focus, and all of those are just great for our kids. I would love for our focus to be educating our kids and not socially engineering our kids, and that's something that's important to me.
I think so. We're going to take a break, but if you find yourself saying, this is the kind of material I'd like to know more about because I live in Texas, I'd like to know what's happening in the legislature, I would like to know what some of the candidates are, those kinds of things. That's one of the benefits of supporting Point of View. This week is our Truth Team 2020, Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times. Boy, these have been uncertain times, haven't they? And so there are going to be some opportunities for you to hear some of the interviews that we're doing. Of course, today we have Representative Candy Noble. Tomorrow we have the Member of Congress, Van Taylor. Then we have the State Senator, Angela Paxton, on Thursday. So those are some individuals that you get to hear a little bit more about in terms of what is happening in Texas. So when we come back, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the whole issue of defund the police. The Austin City Council, in their inscrutable wisdom, decided to remove $150 million from the police budget. And Governor Greg Abbott had a solution for that, and you signed one of those things. I want to talk about that and what that might mean in terms of law enforcement. But as we go to a break, let me mention a couple of things. First of all, you can join with us by going to the website, pointofview.net. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. You can click on the banner that says Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times. Or if you'd like to give someone a call, that line is open now, 800-347-5151. If you'd like to make a small gift, that would be fine. But again, I've suggested for some of you, you could join at the Truth Team level. It's $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. We send you the Outlook magazine. You get this flash drive that has about 140 different articles, interviews, and all sorts of other great material. And you can find out more by giving us a call at 800-347-5151 or visit the website, pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled, and we'll be right back.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again in studio with us, Representative Candy Noble, representing the 89th District in the state of Texas. And by the way, if you appreciate the fact that not only do we cover national news, as we will in about a half an hour from now, but also Texas news, I would certainly love to hear from some of you right now that listen on AM 1190 or a variety of other stations. I recognize not all of you listening this hour in Texas, but since the vast majority are in Texas, we do occasionally focus on Texas issues. And I hope you appreciate that. And if you do, I hope you'll give us a call, 800-347-5151. We do have a match on the table. We've had some generous donors that yesterday, when we didn't have a match, said, okay, here's some money that we will set on the table, which means that every dollar that you give is doubled. So if you decide to give $50, it becomes $100. $100 becomes $200. By the way, if you decide to join us at the $1 a day, $360 a year, that's doubled as well to $720. So that's a pretty significant opportunity, which, to be candid, is probably going to fade away after 3 hours. But you could be able to take advantage of that right now if you give us a call, 800-347-5151, or simply go to the website for pointofview.net and click on that button. Okay, in the next hour, we will be talking about Black Lives Matter, and that will be a conversation we'll have with Michael Brown because he's written quite a bit about that, and we'll talk about the movement of Black Lives Matter. But something that's come out of there has been this defund the police. Now, interestingly enough, the most recent Pew Research poll that I could find found that 42% of Americans say spending money on policing should stay the same. 31% said it should be increased. And you had trouble finding more than about 1 out of every 4 people that thought it should be decreased. And nobody thought it should be zeroed out. And so we've seen what's happened in Seattle. We've seen what has happened in Minneapolis, in New York, in Los Angeles. But Candy Noble, let's come back to this. The Austin City Council voted last month to defund the police department by 1/3, removing $150 million. I was just thinking about, you're going to tell the story about the $1.5 million, but the $150 million from the 2021 police budget. But give us the background, because I think there were some lobbyists from Austin that were threatening to remove a little bit of the money if you passed a piece of legislation. But they doubled it by tenfold, it looks like.
It was incredible when we had the Senate Bill 3 this past session, where we're looking at not capping cities on how much they could raise their tax revenue, but telling them that if you get to a 3.5 revenue increase, then you need to go ask your taxpayers for permission. And Austin was among the many cities that came to complain about that, what they called a cap.
Yeah.
In fact, Austin has more lobbyists, I think, than any other city in the state.
Amazing?
If there's a city that has access to the legislature more than Austin, I don't know who it is, because they could walk down the street and talk to us when we're in session. And they came and said, you cannot put this 3.5% cap on us, or we will have to cut police, and we'll have to do it $1.5 million. And guess what they did? $150 million. 1.5 is a drop in the bucket compared to that.
100-fold.
So talk about disingenuous, right? And so I was, when I call 911, if I have a car wreck, or God forbid, if I'm in the process of being a victim of a crime, I want to know that somebody's, first of all, going to answer that call, but second of all, going to come and take care of what needs to be taken care of. We've all had those situations. I had a call from my daughter's phone one time, and it was a policeman on the other end because she'd been on in an accident on 75. And so we love our law enforcement, and we're so grateful that they put themselves out in harm's way for our benefit every day.
Well, let's talk about this, because as soon as that happened, the governor of the state of Texas, Greg Abbott, said, it is an opportunity here to back the blue. And since I follow you on Facebook, I saw you signing a document, which he had already signed, and then you signed about back the blue. And he's basically saying at the next session, if indeed you're reelected, you're going to have an opportunity to say, you can decide to actually remove funding for the police, but there are going to be repercussions. What are those?
Absolutely. If you're a citizen in a city where you now are not going to be assured that someone's going to come, then you're probably going to have to hire your own security service. I know people that live in Austin right now, as neighborhoods are looking at doing that. that's above and beyond what they already pay in taxes to their city. So I understand why the governor did it. If you're going to have to go find your own means of protecting your property and your person, then you shouldn't have to be paying that to someone else to do it.
Now, again, he's talked about a couple of things that would actually be employed and maybe even enacted. Press conference the other day, I was reading this one. He said that he would freeze property tax revenue for cities that defund the police.
In perpetuity.
That would really hurt a lot of cities, wouldn't it?
Sure
because
would.
they are expecting that they would be able to continue to increase property tax revenue. And here's the game. You might speak to this for just a minute. Because they keep upping the value of our property, they don't have to necessarily vote for a tax increase. They still get an increase because they keep saying that house that you and I live in is worth more today than it was yesterday. But if you had to freeze property tax revenue, that would be a very significant penalty, wouldn't it?
It certainly would, and I think it's appropriate. The other option he gave is that if you have been annexed by a city, you might ask to get out of that city.
Isn't that amazing?
I mean, where I live in Lucas. We actually have the sheriff's department that patrols our area. Can you imagine going, if you're being in the middle of Austin, and saying we no longer want to be part of the city of Austin. We'd rather be in the county where I'm going to have a sheriff's deputy come help me. So I think that's an excellent option. If you do have to go look for your own law enforcement, then you should be able to decide where your tax dollars go to in order to provide that service.
Again, we talked in just the last segment about the real challenge that we're going to face in terms of funding education, which is the disproportionately large part of the Texas budget. But Texas also is not involved in local law enforcement, but does have state troopers and things of that nature. That's going to be another issue, isn't it?
It always is. You know, the truth is that we have DPS that protects our state capital. We've had it locked down because we had significant threats of doing damage to our state capital. That breaks my heart. I love how many visitors we have in there a day, and for that to be a place where we can't even safely have visitors right now in the city of Austin is really heartbreaking to me, and I'm looking forward to the day where we get back to what is normal and back to business as usual as you know what, law-abiding citizens take back their streets.
Yes. You know, one of the things that I learned from Kelly Shackelford, who will be again with us on Friday, is he was looking at a poll about a month ago, and something popped up on that poll that they'd never seen before, and that was the issue safety or security. You know as well as I do, you've been involved in politics as long as I have, we're the old hands at some of this, that usually a lot of people vote in a candidate or out a candidate, in part because of the economy, secondarily because of social issues. But rarely does a word like security or safety show up, although it did about 19 years ago when we had terrorism, but that was that. But I think what's happening, Candy, is there are more and more individuals that are saying, you know, as we'll talk about next hour, Black Lives Matter, they come in not just to the city, and it seems like some of these individuals want to not just protest, which is their right to do, but they want to riot. But then they're going into the communities, and people eating in restaurants outdoors are seeing some of this happen. And if indeed one of those most valuable demographics is the suburban moms, and you can speak to that issue, if safety becomes the issue, law and order candidates are going to do a lot better than those that say, no, I'm not going to say a thing about Black Lives Matter or Antifa or riots or anything else.
I agree completely. I live in one of those neighborhoods that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And we still have free range kids in our neighborhood. That's what it's called when they are able to go out and play on their own. Unfortunately, there's an awful lot of places, not just in Texas, but across our nation right now, where not just children aren't free to go outside, where adults are afraid to go outside. And you know what? That shouldn't be. That should never be. And you know what? I'm one of those that's happy to carry my own protection with me and licensed to do so. I will say that. But really, it shouldn't come to that. We should, as a society, stand up. And I'm seeing more and more folks that are joining hands with us in that message.
And I just might mention that might be why some people want to move into your district, the 89th district, and not have to think about all those kinds of problems. Let me just mention before I let you go, we have a link to votecandynoble.com, and that's where they can find out more about you and about what you're doing in the legislature. And so we've provided that link. And of course, I've followed you on Facebook and social media, and I would encourage people to do that as well. So thank you for being with us.
I've been a big fan of yours for a lot of years. You are one of my political mentors way back. You didn't even know who I was, and I'm so grateful for the investment you've made in my life.
Well, thank you so very much, and we are exceedingly excited that Candy Noble could join us today. Let's take a break. We'll let her go on to a very busy day. We'll be back right after this.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Hello, I'm Chuck Bentley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries. I so appreciate the great work of Kerby Anderson and the Point of View team. Every day they step into the public arena to make a stand for truth by shedding biblical light on the issues that confront us all. Never backing away or compromising on the truth, they're making a difference for you, for me, and the next generation. It's important that we Christians put our money behind those causes that are having a meaningful impact. My wife and I personally support Point of View, and we encourage you to do the same.
Back once again, if you would like to join with us, and I hope that you would, that number is 800-347-5151. So mentioned just a minute ago, of course, we have a match on the table. So if you would like to support this ministry at, say, $50 a month, that could be certainly one thing that turns into $100 a month. Or if you say, no, I could only really just maybe write you a check for $50 one time, still that $50 becomes $100. So whatever level you can do, we will leave that to you. And you don't have to have all the money now, but we encourage your pledge. And especially this hour, as so many of you are actually in the Texas area, although I know some of you are outside of that area as well. I'd love to hear from you, because this is an opportunity for us to focus, as we just did a few minutes ago with Candy Noble, as we will tomorrow with Congressman Van Taylor, and as we will do Thursday with the State Senator Angela Paxson, to focus on some of the issues that are relevant to those of you in the state of Texas. If you're outside the state of Texas or nothing else, you can kind of learn from some of the things that are happening in this state and apply them to your state as well. And most importantly, we want to equip you to make a difference, because as you will see today, we already have spent some time talking about climate change. We've talked about education. We've talked about law enforcement. Next hour, we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter. Let me pick another one. One of my other articles I've posted here has to do with Scott Atlas. Now, Dr. Scott Atlas, if you're not familiar, is a prominent neuroradiologist and professor at Stanford University Medical School, but also a while back I did an interview with the Hoover Institute, which is associated with Stanford. And because he said one or two things that YouTube didn't like, they pulled the interview. Now, you might say, well, he's probably just an outlier. No, he's one of the people that the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States have put on the coronavirus task force. But that was enough, because he took a statement or two that they thought was controversial to pull an individual that is being consulted right now by individuals in the government and is a colleague with other people that you have heard talk about these issues. I think it illustrates only so well one of the real concerns. And so the article that I have posted here is an article that appeared in a very significant journal called The Federalist, in which it says censoring Scott Atlas should be the last straw for big tech censorship. And so if you think that we are not getting all the information, here's another great illustration of this. And I was trying to even figure out, okay, what was his sin? What was the thing that caused them to say, we cannot have this video on there? And it turns out that in a conversation he had about the dangers of the lockdowns, he made the statement that children really are not good transmitters of the disease of coronavirus. Matter of fact, at one point he says they don't even transmit the virus. Later on he said, okay, really more accurately, it is really not impossible, but less likely, because it was quoting from the American Academy of Pediatrics review at the time, which actually has said that, quote, children are not significant drivers of the COVID-19 pandemic. But that was enough to give YouTube the justification for saying this is misinformation that contradicts the World Health Organization, which hasn't always been so accurate. So anyway, I've posted that article. We'll probably get into that a little bit more later, but both the Wall Street Journal and this particular article from The Federalist, I think, have done a great job of pointing out that this may be, to use an old trite expression, a bridge too far. This might be such censorship of an individual that's on the coronavirus task force that even that individual cannot be left without being censored by YouTube. And I think we're starting to see the dangers of big tech, as we have talked about so often on this program. Let me just mention in passing, too, before I certainly wind down this hour, one of the other articles I've posted is on Netflix and child pornography. And again, let's be honest, maybe it would be better to say Netflix and sexualization of children. I don't plan to watch this particular program called Cuties. But the good news is that Michael Knowles, who was on the program with us recently, did take the time to watch it all the way. A variety of other people I know have watched it. And his argument is response is always, well, this is just trying to highlight an issue. but in highlighting the issue, they engage in the sexualization of children. Imagine if you were trying to maybe highlight the issue of prostitution or pornography, and while you're trying to highlight the issue, you show lots of blatant pornography, or you show what prostitutes do behind closed doors. The argument that I'm trying to just highlight this problem really kind of falls on deaf ears, because now you're actually promoting the very thing you're trying to highlight as a problem. And so this is what has been kind of the conclusion. And so whether it is Mark Davis, whether it is, of course, Michael Knowles, or a variety of other people that have taken the time to watch the film and the program, we don't need to actually watch it. We can simply see what has been said. And one of the articles I've posted there shows the incredible pushback from Hollywood and Netflix saying, no, these are just radical, ultra right-wing people reacting to it. When, by the way, you're seeing people both left and right, both Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, saying this is really just too far. And many of those individuals are canceling their subscription to Netflix. So we've posted that as well. Some of the pictures are blurred out because you actually don't want to see some of the pictures. But I thought, if nothing else, one more resource we want to put in your hands, and just an illustration of the fact that here on Point of View, we do our best to cover a variety of different issues. Sometimes people say, well, what do you cover on your program? Even today, my wife and I are out walking, and my wife was trying to explain what we do on the program. It's kind of like, we cover it all, because every issue probably has some relevance to faith, family, and freedom. And so if you find yourself saying, I've learned quite a bit from what you've been talking about here on Point of View, I hope you might consider joining with us. It can be as simple as joining with us with a one-time gift, and we'd be grateful for that. But I hope some of you might consider getting this flash drive, which we make available for your gift of $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. You might say, I can't write you a check right now for $360, but $1 a day? Yeah, I can probably do that. On here, we got about 140 different articles or interviews, and many of them are full interviews where you can listen to Point of View, and so that is available. At the next level, of course, if you want to join us at $50 a day, here are some of the booklets. One on making your vote count, politicized culture, capitalism, and socialism. We send these to you every single month, so there are some really significant benefits to joining at different levels. And if you go to the website, pointofview.net, click on that banner that says Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times, you will then see at the various levels what are some of the benefits that we provide to you. I know you don't give to get, but certainly we want to say thank you by sending some of these resources. And of course, if you'd like to talk to someone, you can, of course, call that number right now, especially as we go to a break, 800-347-5151. Matching fund on the table, which means your gift of $100 becomes $200. Your gift of $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 becomes $720. We'll be right back.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is our Tuesday edition of Point of View, and today 700 people at the White House to actually observe the signing of the peace treaty between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. And Benjamin Netanyahu already there with President Trump. And if you think that that is significant, and I do, you also can see one of the reasons why on Point of View we try to cover these stories, because I've noticed that most of the mainstream press either hasn't covered this event or has significantly downplayed it. And yet there was a very good piece that by Rich Lowry that points out that most people didn't give Jared Kushner even the possibility of being able to move the ball on the Middle East peace. After all, he doesn't have any diplomatic experience, but here we are. And when the three leaders got together, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, President Donald Trump, and the Crown Prince, at one point, it was interesting because somebody said, hey, it's 2020, it's been a really tough year, but this has got to be the best news of 2020. The president said, what do you think, Bibi Netanyahu? And he said, are you kidding me? This is the best news in 20 years. And yet you can see how individuals saw that there wasn't any possibility of this, rather than actually acknowledging that such things as moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem would be positive. Instead, you have a lot of the foreign policy experts saying that that would result in riots in the streets, but it did not. They were also telling us that by then later killing Soleimani, the actual leader in Iran, that would lead to all sorts of tension in the street, and it did not. By even acknowledging Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, they said this was going to increase tensions in the Middle East, and it did not. And, of course, all the experts in the foreign policy arena were telling us that this would cause an isolation of Israel, and now they have more friends than anyone else. So I'm thinking of writing a piece, maybe calling it Foreign Policy and George Costanza. George Costanza, what do you mean? Well, if you remember George Costanza, he was the guy in Seinfeld that just always made the wrong decisions. And then one day it occurred to him that if I'm always making the wrong decisions, the next time I make a decision, I'm going to do just the opposite of what I've done before. And I would suggest to you that the foreign policy establishment is a good example of George Costanza, because everything they told us that would not work actually has worked. And if you're looking for some of the accomplishments under the Trump administration, this signing today that you probably will only hear about here on Point of View, and then maybe on Thursday, because it turns out Gary Bauer is going to be at that signing, so we'll have him on Thursday to talk about it, is a good illustration. And so in some respects, some of the people there in the State Department, not necessarily saying the Secretary of State, because I think he's doing a good job, but a lot of people in what's called Foggy Bottom, they're a lot like George Costanza. They just keep telling us that it's not going to work. And actually, in almost every case, Donald Trump, or in this case, Jared Kushner, have exceeded expectations. So just one of the reasons why I wanted to cover some of that today. We have a lot more to cover. Let me just give you a rundown real quickly. Michael Brown will be with us in a few minutes. He's been writing about Black Lives Matter, and we have posted a couple of his very good articles details on that. Next hour, we'll have Dinesh D'Souza with us. And, of course, he is the author of the book United States of Socialism, and also a new film coming out called The Trump Card. So we'll be talking with him. But this is also our Truth Team Week, Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times, Truth Team 2020. And with me all week is Brad Fisk. And if nothing else, some real successes today that you'd only probably hear about here on Point of View.
Historic. I would put it at the level of historic of what's going on in the Middle East right now. And we have a president who has courage and tenacity and a team around him to get things done like that I don't think would have ever been done over anybody else I can think of in that leadership role. And you know, this illustrates, as you said a moment ago, the importance of Truth Team Week, because we are building a war chest between now and November 3rd. And what we're going to do with that is be a source of information just gushing forth truth. That's really important. We're not going to be giving you the bias of things. We're going to be giving you the facts. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And you can join the Truth Team at $1 a day right now at 800-347-5151. That's $360 for the whole year, and you'll be a member of the Truth Team. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can also give online at pointofview.net.
You know, as I look at our website here, it has Unchanging Truth in Uncertain Times, but I also see a banner that says Matching Fund.
That's correct.
Hey.
We have a matching fund of $5,000, and every dollar you give up to that amount will be doubled. I said doubled, and that's just awesome. So talk about leveraging your gift. A gift of any size up to that amount will be doubled. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Come on, join the Truth Team. There has never been a better time or a more strategic time, I believe, in the recent history of this country to stand for values of the Bible. That's what we do here every day.
You know, we're going to be talking in just a few minutes with Michael Brown, and he's really been attacked a great deal because, first of all, he was the one that was first letting a lot of people know that Black Lives Matter movement was made up of individuals that call themselves Marxist. Now he's really, and I've even posted one article so you can see what all the nasty things people have said about him, because he's been pointing out, as we've tried to on this program, the kind of connection between the movers in Black Lives Matter movement and witchcraft and calling on spirits of the dead and those kinds of things. And again, one of the points I make so often, Brad, is that if you think you're going to hear that on any other program,
no way.
Other than maybe some of our friends at American Family Radio, because we've also had Abe Hamilton on this program, but apart from maybe one or two other programs in the entire country, conservative, liberal, Christian, non-Christian, you're just not hearing that. And that's the kind of material we cover every single day here on Point of View.
And that's what your gift will help us do. It will help us release this information to the rest of our culture that's not getting fair coverage for real, truthful news. And your gift to the ministry will make that difference. You can go to pointofview.net, Kerby, pointofview.net, and give your $1 a day or any other amount as the Lord leads. Many have given $50 a month, at $100 a month. I mean, any level, a single gift, a monthly gift will be so special, and it'll all be doubled. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Please stand with us during this most critical time.
I might just mention, too, as you go to the website, you'll find some articles on Black Lives Matter, because a lot of people said, okay, I got to read it for myself. You know, he's going to be saying some things that a lot of people think are controversial. That's why we post the articles. We have one on big tech censorship. We'll get to that later. One on Netflix, cuties, and the whole issue of the sexualization of children. So if you find yourself saying, I hear it on Point of View, but I got to try to convince my friends about some of these issues. Right. It's there. So again, your support is not only supporting this daily program, but all the material that we've made available, some of the videos, my viewpoints, commentary. We have the iVoter guide up there now, so you can know how to vote. All of it is available, and that's what your gift is doing, and it's doubled right now. So 800-347-5151 is the number to call, or you can simply go to the website, pointofview.net, and that will tell you about some of the giving levels and some of the gifts we like to provide to you. But again, give us a call, 800-347-5151. Michael Brown with us right after these important messages.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
During this presidential election, we will likely hear pundits talking about flipping courts. Will a re-elected President Trump continue flipping courts, or will a President Biden be able to flip courts back? When Trump took office, Democratic appointees had a majority in 9 circuit courts. By contrast, Republican appointees only had a majority in 4 circuit courts. It's also worth mentioning that judges appointed by Republican presidents don't always render a conservative opinion, while nearly all judges appointed by Democratic presidents do render a liberal opinion. In the last few years, President Trump has managed to flip 3 more circuit courts. Those would be the 3rd Circuit Court of Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, the 11th Circuit Court of Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, and the 2nd Circuit Court of New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. If President Trump is reelected, it is likely he would be able to appoint judges that would eventually flip other circuit courts. That would include the 4th Circuit Court of Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the Carolinas, and the 9th Circuit Court of California and other western states. It is likely that many judges are waiting to see how the election turns out before deciding whether they might take senior status and retire. This allows judges to retire with their current salary, which they can receive even if they join a law firm for an additional salary. A President Biden, along with a Vice President Harris, would want to flip these circuit courts back to where they were when President Obama left office. They would want to push through nominees that would be very different from the ones put forward by the Trump administration over these last few years. The most lasting legacy of a president is who he puts on the court. This presidential election will determine which way these courts flip. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
Truth Team 2020, and we are now going to be joined by Dr. Michael Brown. If you have been following some of the material we've posted on the website on Black Lives Matter movement, and I do, again, want to say the difference between Black Lives Matter, true, and the movement behind it. We have certainly posted a previous piece by Dr. Michael Brown. We've also had Abraham Hamilton on the program to talk about that, and we're now going to also point you to another article that he has written on confronting the witchcraft of BLM leaders and some of the response he's received. We've also posted one on when will the Black Lives Matter movement leaders denounce the attempted murder of 2 Los Angeles sheriff deputies. So those are some topics we're going to address over the next couple of minutes. Michael Brown, as you well know, has been on the program with us before, founder and president of Ask Dr. Brown Ministries, holds a PhD in New Near Eastern languages, has really one of the foremost apologists for as a Messianic Jewish background, as well as an individual that's spoken on everything from witchcraft to homosexuality. And Dr. Michael Brown, always great to have you on the program.
Yes, great to be back with you. Thanks, Kerby.
Let's talk about this. We'll start with the simple one that we covered months ago, and that is a lot of people said, I support Black Lives Matter. And I said, well, I want to distinguish that between a movement because those leaders of the movement, Patrice Cullors and others, claim to be trained Marxists. And some people said, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, because they say that. And you've documented that in some of your articles as well, haven't you?
Yes, in fact, the simplest thing for me is to call it the BLM movement. In other words, not to dignify it with the statement that Black Lives Matter, which we do affirm and which we know through much of American history our black friends did not feel was the reality. So we affirm that, and I don't even want to associate that with the movement, which I just call the BLM movement. So we know the founders, all of them radical feminists, the three main founders. We know that Patrisse Cullors is on record as saying we're trained Marxists. We know that two of the three founders openly identify as being queer activists. We know that when you go to their mission statement, that it does not mention the word father a single time. It mentions parents, but father, never. What it says is one of our goals is to disrupt the Western nuclear family. It is an anti-God, anti-Christ movement. We were warning about this for months and saying, listen, this is going to turn against you. If you want to stand for racial reconciliation, I'm with you. If you want to expose police brutality and injustice, I'm with you. But this movement has wrong origins. It's going in the wrong direction. You just read their statement of values and goals. You'll find over and over the importance of queer activism, transgender activism, but nothing in terms of other issues that would be precious and important to us. And the clear absence of the father is undeniable. That's why it's no surprise that groups like Antifa have joined in. That's why it's no surprise that in one protest, Bibles were burned. This is where this thing is going. That's why synagogues and churches have been vandalized by people in this movement. The origins are from below, not from above.
Let's, if we can, now go to the next step, and that is the whole issue of what you call the Jezebel kind of spirit. And we, of course, posted your previous article. We now have the newest one, and we've also had Abe Hamilton on this program because he was the one that pointed to some of these interviews on Facebook. And I think it's interesting, Dr. Michael Brown, that when people sometimes will call and say, well, where are you getting all that? And say, it's on Facebook. You can watch it yourself. You can follow the clips that are available there. But even though you've written about this on the stream, and we quoted you, of course, from the stream, the most recent one took place when on the past Sunday night, you met with a California pastor, Rob McCoy, to really address these issues. And that's when it caught the attention of Right Wing Watch, which is kind of a radical left-wing organization, posted all sorts of information. And, oh, did you get some really passionate responses? Talk about that.
Yeah, of course, no surprise, Kerby. You know this. But look, my PhD in Near Eastern languages does not directly tie in with the subjects that we're speaking of, but it did train me how to do serious research, get to the actual sources, get past the theories, get things out of the horse's mouth. So we know, there's no denying, that Patrisse Cullors and other leaders, regional leaders, national leaders, have certain roots in African religion or believe in that, and part of it is calling on the spirits of the dead. Of course, Abe Hamilton's done a great job bringing that out. So what that means is for them, when they say his name, say Eric Garner, say George Floyd, say Ahmaud Arbery, say their name, say Breonna Taylor, they're not just saying, show that you care. Of course we care. Of course we say their names. But they are calling on the spirits of the deceased to rise up and empower their work today. If that's not Jezebelic, if that's not demonic and witchcraft, I don't know what is. So when I just talked about that openly, the right-wing page, their home page, they go after me all the time. I consider that kind of a badge of honor. But their home page does not allow comments, but their Facebook page allows comments. So a friend sent me the link. I began tracking it. It's remarkable. I mean, not only one after another defending them, having no problem with that, and then mocking us for praying to an invisible God that doesn't exist. But some were actually saying, hey, your name is next. In other words, they're going to be reading your name next. And others saying, call for the lions, time to eat the Christians again. So there is a tremendous hostility. There is a deep, deep spiritual battle that we're fighting. It doesn't mean we're fearful, but it means we need to be on the alert and separate real issues of concern from this demonic agenda that is ripping America apart right now.
And again, if some of you might say, I've got to read it for myself. So it's the second article we've posted. You can read the material by Michael Brown and then all the responses. I couldn't even read some of them on radio, Brad Fisk, but if nothing else, it helped answer that question because there was such an insistence, especially at some particular protests I've seen where they say your name, Breonna Taylor. And I was like, why is the insistence on saying her name and why all the posters? And that, of course, cleared that up. But let's just, before we get any further, mention that in studio with me is Brad Fisk. And Brad, one of the reasons we bring this kind of information out is because we want to educate people. But we also, twice a year, come to our listeners and say, if you appreciate this kind of cutting-edge information, we certainly are dependent upon your financial gifts to continue bringing it to you.
Yeah, many people don't know that we're listener-supported radio, and that means we're listener-supported radio. And it's really important to hear from you. Not really so much for the money, and if you really stop to think about it for a minute, to join the team, to join with us, to undergird us. But your financial gifts do encourage us to continue doing what we've been doing. How many decades are we talking about here for Point of View?
Since 1972.
There you go. So talk about
Getting
faithfulness
close to 50 years.
to the message.
Started with Marla Maddox.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right. So here's an opportunity for you to join with us. This is a critical time. We are really on the edge of huge things happening in this country. And here's a phone number that you can call to join the Truth Team. It's $1 a day. It's $30 a month, $360 for the year. And we just really encourage you to come in at that level. We have some gifts we'll talk about later and such. But what's important is you standing with us. 800-347-5151. That's toll free, 800-347-5151. And also you can get to us at pointofview.net.
Let me just mention that we're going to go to a break, but when we come back, I want to continue with Dr. Michael Brown. First of all, last time we had him on, we talked about his book, Evangelicals at the Crossroads, Will We Pass the Trump Test? And a book I highly recommend, and we have a link to that on the website. We have a link, of course, to his Facebook page, his Twitter page, YouTube, and the rest. Of course, you can also listen to him on Line of Fire radio program. And most importantly, this second article, Confronting the Witchcraft of BLM Leaders. When we come back from the break, I thought, if nothing else, we would also get into the first article we've posted, Will the BLM Leaders and Supporters Denounce the Murder of the two Los Angeles, or attempted murder, I should say, of the two Los Angeles sheriff deputies, and some of those issues as well. So lots to cover, but let's mention again that one of the resources we want to make available to you, just receive those today. You got the flash drive right there. Has 140 different articles, and some of those are actual full interviews. Some of them are my viewpoints, commentaries. And as I said, if you started reading these and started listening to the interviews, it's going to take you a few months to work your way through all the material that is available. And we make that available to you if you join us at the $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. And so, again, you can join at that level or more. And most importantly, we have a match on the table.
We do. Every dollar given right now will be doubled. Every gift, monthly gift, single gift, and it's so easy to do. 800-347-5151. We'll have you on and off the phone in a few moments. 800-347-5151.
I would encourage you to call right now because you don't want to miss all the conversation we're going to have with Michael Brown. Of course, you can also go to the website anytime and even be listening and typing it at pointofview.net. 1-800-347-5151. We'll be right back.
Have you seen the new book, In Defense of Looting? Yep, the author says that theft can be a really good thing. Oh, except for theft of the writer's intellectual property. There's a warning against that right inside the book. Steal from thee, not from me. NPR even did an interview with the author, helping spread this mental virus to countless others. Think of Point of View Radio as a vaccine against such things. When you support Kerby Anderson and the rest of the team, you're saying we need unchanging truth in these uncertain times. You're saying that right is right, wrong is wrong. You're providing an alternative to the distortions and outright lies of so many media sources in our day. Don't let fake news go unopposed. Join the Truth Team now by visiting pointofview.net. www.pointoфview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Kerby Anderson.
Truth Team 2020, and we are privileged to have with us a little bit longer Dr. Michael Brown. And some of you oftentimes say, well, where do you get your insight and information? Well, you're listening to one of those individuals. His various articles in the stream are a must read. Of course, his book, as well as many other books that he's written in the past. And Michael, before we talk about BLM movement anymore, before you came on the program, I talked about the fact that we have 700 people meeting at the White House today for a ceremony in which there will be the signing of the peace treaty with the United Arab Emirates and the peace declaration with Bahrain. And as a former Jew and a Jewish believer, Messianic Jew, I know that you've been paying attention to what has happened in Israel, the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the recognition of the Golan Heights, and what I think is a very historic peace treaty, which has been either downplayed or completely ignored by the mainstream media. But I wanted to spend some time talking about it today, and I'd like to know your thoughts about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's history being made, regardless of what we think prophetically in terms of where this is going and what's going to happen ultimately in the Middle East and Antichrist and end of the world. Just looking at this is not just massive, but unprecedented. So the first peace treaty with Israel and one of the surrounding nations was 1979 with Egypt. So you remember how massive that was. So from 1948 until 1979, that was the first one. Then the next one, about 16 years later, mid-1990s with Jordan. Nothing since then. 25 years. So now to have United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and then talk of others potentially joining, Saudi Arabia and others, nothing like this has happened. For two nations to be joining on at the same time is unprecedented. And here's the remarkable thing. What were we told? When you move the embassy to Jerusalem, that will be an all-out war through the Middle East. The Muslim world will be on an uproar probably around the world. That will be disaster. It'll be a bloodbath in Israel. The repercussions against America will be massive. Well, it's been the opposite. Mm-hmm. In fact, although I wish the best for the Palestinians and hope they can get some good leadership that can really bring about a harmonious situation with Israel, the fact is that the Palestinians have been marginalized all the more as these other Arab nations say, hey, why can't we have peace with Israel, and why can't we live in economic solidarity? And the fact is, the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So right now, Iran, now with Turkey, that's the big enemy. And these nations know it. And they know, okay, Israel is also on their target list. We better join together for the common good, stand against Iran, stand with America, stand with Israel. So it's amazing. And yes, I know that Trump can alienate people, but he came in with a target on his back from the left. We know that. Could you imagine if this had been, say, Barack Obama that had brokered this? I mean, George Bush, Bill Clinton, but if it had been Barack Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize before he had actually done anything, this would have been one of the greatest acts in history by any living human being, and yet you have the left. You're basically ignoring it. You look on the websites, it's like, isn't this a major piece of news that should be reported? And it's hardly even mentioned.
I know. Either it's a mirage or, I guess Nancy Pelosi said, it's just an attempt to distract from all the people that Donald Trump has killed through COVID-19, which is just, it's hard to even take seriously. But let's get back to the BLM movement for just a minute. And some people might be saying, well, don't you think racism is an issue? Well, here's the booklet that we've done, A Biblical Point of View on Racism. Or don't you think we need to address the issues in the criminal justice system? Well, here's our booklet on criminal justice. And we've been spending some time talking about this, but as you raise in the first article we've posted here, we don't know who the shooter was, but we do know some of the identity of those individuals that tried to block the exits and entrances into the emergency room, shouting, "We hope they die, death to the police, kill the police," and well, some of these, Brad, I can't read on the air. You know what they're getting into. And you would say, when we've in the past had somebody call themselves pro-life and then tried to shoot an abortion doctor, I don't think they were pro-life, but nevertheless, they were always denounced by the pro-life movement. I'm still looking for some of the leaders in the BLM movement, the Antifa movement, even in the Democratic Party, to denounce some of the rioting that has taken place. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I have so much to say on that. And before I do, this is unsolicited, But for all you listeners, can I really encourage you to join in and become partners with this important radio ministry? Ask yourself how many voices for how many years have been doing this consistently without deviating from the central Christian message and yet equipping you to deal with the cultural, social issues that surround you. So you'll be getting instructions how to join in. But unsolicited, as someone with my own ministry and radio show, I want to wholeheartedly say, get behind this work. It's important, and it is listener supported. Okay, having said that, here's my concern with the BLM movement. It is not so much standing for the good of all black lives, say like a 3-year-old kid caught in crossfire in the inner city of Chicago and killed. It's not thinking about the black lives in the womb. It's specifically targeting those who are objects of police brutality and unarmed victims of police brutality and things like that, which we all stand against. Where it exists, we stand against that. But we also need to know that the leaders of the movement do not encourage the murder of policemen and women, that the leaders of the movement, even if they want to argue for the ridiculous notion that we can safely defund police, so when some maniac comes to your house to try to shoot and kill you, you say, well, just have them wait. We'll get a counselor there to talk to them in a minute. You know, aside from the absurdity of the defund the police movement, we need to know from the leaders that they do not encourage violence against police officers, that they do not encourage the cold-blooded ambush and attempted murder of 2 officers in their vehicle, that, in fact, the leaders say, we deplore that, we denounce that, that does not represent who we are. In fact, if they want to give credence for their standing for black lives, they need to say this is not who we are. We want to see justice. We do not want to see murder and violence. And yet, what appears to be the reality to me is that there is so much hostility towards police, so much hostility towards law and order, so much of a spirit of anarchy fueling the fires of this movement that we will not hear the leaders speak out. In fact, we should have long ago. This is now Saturday night. Here we are a few days later, and we still haven't heard the word.
And one of the things that you point out in the very last part of the article is you were looking at headlines on MSNBC, Huffington Post, CNN, and others, never mentioning the protesters outside the hospital. And back to one of the reasons why we encourage people to support Point of View is we want to give people like you an opportunity to certainly reach a different audience. You certainly reach quite a number through your radio program, but again, we reach different individuals. And I just got the feeling that you're not going to be invited on MSNBC or CNN to talk about witchcraft and BLM movement. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, the fact is there have been effective boycotts of people like me, groups like GLAAD, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, which I nicknamed the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Disagreement. They put me on their list of their first 36 commentators to exclude from popular media because they did not want our viewpoints getting out. And I was honestly shocked when I went to website after website, from CNN to MSNBC to Huffington Post. First, it was not the lead story about these cops being ambushed in cold blood. I had to find the headline on the homepage, not a mention of the death to the police chants and F the pigs and all that, not a mention of that. I then read through the entire articles, not a mention of that. I then went to the New York Times homepage, and this was on Sunday afternoon, so just, hours after the shooting that had taken place Saturday night, not a single headline on the entire homepage of the New York Times even mentioning the shooting of these police. And you know what I think about? We look at nations like North Korea, and they just have their national news outlet, and that's it. That's all you're exposed to. I'm not sure it's that much worse than a lot of what we get in America, because in America, we think we're getting the full perspective. We think if we flip on CNN, they're going to tell us what's really happening in the world. No, what we're going to get is a 24/7 op-ed piece from CNN. Let it be known, let it be proclaimed, and let truth get out. Let Americans look at the truth and sort it out for themselves.
Well, thank you for what you've done. And again, I would commend to individuals finding out a little bit more about your radio program, because we have that link, Line of Fire. Of course, we've been talking about and mentioned more than a few times, Evangelicals at the Crossroads. Will we pass the Trump test? And those are great resources. And Dr. Michael Brown, always great to have you on the program. And I look forward to the next opportunity.
Yep, same here. Keep up the great work.
Let's just, before we take a break, Brad, remind people that we are looking forward to hearing from a few of our listeners. And I know he has to run on to his radio program. I could keep him on all day because he really is singing our song, isn't he?
Yep. That's just illustrates again why we need your support for Point of View Radio. We are listener supported. Every dollar you give right now will be doubled in a match challenge. So a great opportunity for you to give. Even if you give monthly, it'll be matched for the whole year. 800-347-5151.
Or pointofview.net, 1-800-347-5151. We have a few more comments to make, and we will do that right after this.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
I never listened to talk radio prior to Point of View, but I couldn't get enough of the thoughtful, civil dialogue and analysis of current events and culture from a biblical perspective. When my local Christian radio station changed formats, I followed Point of View to the internet and later to my smartphone. My entire life has been transformed, physical, financial, intellectual, because of this ministry.
Might just mention that in the next hour, we're going to be talking with our good friend Dinesh D'Souza, and we'll do our best to try to pack in all sorts of great things he's going to say. But if you think about this, just look at the topics we've addressed already. We talked about this idea of the peace treaty and the peace declaration, and that's taking place. Of course, we've talked about the BLM movement as well. Next hour, I want to get into the whole question of California burning for our California listeners, because you got people like Tom Steyer saying the only solution to stop the California wildfires is to elect Joe Biden. I can't believe he actually said
boy.
that. I can't believe he said
Okay.
that. He's a really smart guy. But anyway, we're going to get into that because there was a very good in-depth journalistic piece about why we have these mega fires. But it came out in August before all the memos went out saying, well, we've got to blame the fires on climate change, and we got to blame climate change on Donald Trump, which is why we have to elect Joe Biden, if you can follow that. So that we will get to next hour. But I might also mention, just before we run out of time in this segment, we also have a couple of articles I'd want you to see. One, the decision by YouTube to censor Dr. Scott Atlas. Now, you might say, I've heard that name. Well, you should, because he's a very prominent neuroradiologist and professor at the Stanford University Medical Center. He's also a commentator, and a while back did an interview with the people at the Hoover Institute. He's also on the coronavirus task force. But something he said back in June, which actually I think is factually true, that is that younger children really aren't spreaders of the coronavirus, was enough for YouTube to say, well, that seems to be contrary to what the World Health Organization says. So they pulled one of the experts that the president and the other doctors are depending on from YouTube, which I think shows the most egregious example yet of big tech censorship. So if you want to read that, this is a piece that appeared in a very significant journal called The Federalist. Also, today's editorial page editorial from the Wall Street Journal gets into that. And we also have one on Netflix and child pornography. We'll get into that a little bit later in case you've had some people saying, what's this whole thing about cuties and Netflix and the sexualization of children? We've posted that. And Brad, I'm just thinking, that's a lot of topics. And some people say that one of the things I like about Point of View is there's a fair amount of breadth and hopefully a significant amount of depth.
I was given a list a little while ago of the topics just last week that you covered on the program, and there's like 2.5 dozen topics, and you've covered all of these, and they go from soup to nuts. I mean, it's a wide variety of information. And again, we can't do this without your support and standing with us, because it is Truth Week, Truth Team Week, and we are dependent on you as a listener-supported ministry for our funding. We only do this twice a year, Kerby, and it's so important to hear from our friends at 800-347-5151. How about $1 a day? $360 for the year, and you'll get a free gift. And what is this?
Well, again, this is the flash drive. I'll hold it up for people to see. And, of course, it works for any kind of computer, so you got those there as well.
It's got a couple of input
140 different items on it. Yeah. Now, some of those are written, so some of them are our viewpoints commentary. My one today is about flipping courts. We'll talk about that in just a minute, because that's in the news as well. But it also includes full interviews with a number of what we thought were the best programs, some of the individuals that we've just talked to. Matter of fact, I think we have a Michael Brown program on there. We certainly have a Gary Bauer program on there, and Dinesh D'Souza program on there, and a number of others. And so this is a resource that we make available to you if you are willing to give at least $1 a day, at least $30 a month, $360 a year.
I made a discovery a little earlier today that you don't know about. I listened to the video interview that is on this stick. You can't get this interview anywhere else but on this thumb drive that we are giving away for a gift of $1 a day or more. Why is it so special? You will hear an incredibly outstanding summary of the entire election coming up, all the facets, all what's going on, and Kerby, you do a masterful job of covering all that topic. So for that alone, it would be worth for you to get this and listen to what he has to say about the upcoming election and the tensions and the historical aspects of what's going to be happening. This can be yours for a gift of $1 a day or more. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. You can also give online at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
I've also heard that we have a match, and we haven't used it all up yet. So that means that we have some dollars sitting on the table, because we had one donor that said, you didn't have a match yesterday, so let's give you one today. And so there's a few $1,000s, I suspect, left on that. And so that means that if you wanted to give $1 a day, $30 a month, you don't have to give it all. You can just give the pledge. That $360 gets doubled to $720, doesn't it?
That's right. We're actually looking for 5 of you who've never never given before. Brand new donors to step up with a gift of any amount. And again, if you give it that level of $1 a day or more, we have the flash drive for you. And we're also looking for a couple of you to come in at $1,000. We asked for that yesterday, and it happened. So I'm really thinking there's a couple people out there who can do that $1,000 gift. But there's many that can't. We understand, and you know what? We know there's tough times, and there's a lot of issues going on with the virus, and we understand that. If you can't give right now, that's perfectly okay. Please let us know how to pray for you, because we would love to do that. Again, the number 800-347-5151. Let's fill every phone line up right now. Every dollar doubled. 800-347-5151.
Might just mention, too, that some of you might say, well, how do I get these booklets? Because I've held some of those up. Here's a biblical view on
Those
the
are
politicized
awesome.
culture, because we are so politicized. Here's one on making your vote count, which is kind of relevant right now. Here's the one on racism, which I mentioned a minute ago, one on criminal justice. Matter of fact, the most recent ones have been things like on loneliness because of the lockdown, or I think you just read the one on voter fraud.
I did.
And it makes
Very
you...
well written. And I'll tell you, we got to be careful, because this could be really tough if they try to hijack the election.
So that's one of the reasons why we encourage you, if you want to give at the $50 a month level, you'll receive those, and we put those in the mail each month. And, of course, if you find yourself saying, I'd like to get one of those in the past, I'm sure we can probably do that. But some of the most significant ones are on this flash drive. So that's another reason to get the flash drive.
Right.
And then you have the digital copy that you can then send to someone else, or you can listen to. Or I found sometimes if I'm involved in a conversation, I say, I'd love to tell you this story about this individual who actually came from slaves. I recognize his great-great-grandparents were slaves, who developed a relationship with an individual who were the slave owners.
Oh, wow.
And just like something
That's
that you
cool.
saw out of, again, Martin Luther King Jr., he said he looked forward to the days in which the former sons of slaves would sit down with the former sons of slave owners in the table of brotherhood. And to play that right off of this is just amazing. So that's just one more thing we want to put in your hands. We recognize you don't give to get, but that's the benefit of joining at that level. And again, we have a match on the table, and we need to hear from our listeners.
We do, and here's how to get a hold of us right now. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151, or you can also give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, looking for 5 brand new donors and 2 1,000 givers right now. Would you please give us a call?
When we come back, I'm going to talk about some of these fires and whether that has to do with climate change. And then we're going to be talking with our good friend Dinesh D'Souza, the United States of Socialism and the new movie Trump Card. So those all coming up. But you can give us a call right now while we're waiting to get back on the air. 800-347-5151. Of course, you can go to the website, pointofview.net.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something. You vote. You anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, Truth Team 2020 on changing truth in uncertain times. Just a few minutes, we'll be talking with Dinesh D'Souza. But I thought for just a minute, since we've had all these wildfires in, of course, California, Oregon, all over the western states, you've seen a theme that has really surfaced over the last couple of days. The wildfires are due to climate change. Climate change is due to Republicans. Climate change in particular is due to Donald Trump. So then you need to elect Joe Biden. And if you think I'm making this up, I'll hold this up for those of you watching here. This is a print up of one of the posts by Tom Steyer, environmentalist. The only solution we have to stop California wildfires is electing Joe Biden. Whoa, where did that come from? He's a really smart guy, and I don't think he really believes it. But the bottom line is that sometimes you have to look at what people do rather than what they say. Does he really believe that? No, any more than I've used this example before of former President Barack Obama, who says, the tides and the various ocean levels are going to rise, and then goes and spends millions of dollars in Martha's Vineyard for a piece of property on the shoreline. Now, if he really believed that it was going to flood, he wouldn't buy it there. And so one of the things that I thought we might mention for just a minute is to recognize that there is a reason for this, and it has been very well documented in an article that appeared in ProPublica. I just mentioned, Jim Garrity mentioned this. They know how to prevent mega fires, but they won't have anybody listen. And this was written about in August. That's before the memo, if you will, went out that said we've got to blame all these fires on Donald Trump and global warming and climate change, because they point out that the overzealous fire suppression in this article in California and other places is a real problem, and that the Forest Service and others have wanted to do prescribed burns or managed burns, but that has not happened. And academics even believe that between 4 and 11 million acres burned each year in prehistoric California. I grew up in California. We used to learn about the fact that sometimes Indians would have prescribed burns, but that's not happening anymore. Partially because of NIMBY, not in my backyard. Homeowners don't like smoke or a barren landscape, so that's one reason. Liability maybe is another, because no one knows when a controlled burn might get out of hand. But the biggest issue is kind of the environmentalist issue here. And it illustrates again that we understand why we have some of these mega fires. Does climate change have any impact? Maybe, but that's not why we have these burns. And if nothing else, it's just an illustration of the kind of material we're trying to provide to you, because over the next couple of days, you're going to hear more and more people claim that the reason we have these out-of-control fires in these western states is due to Donald Trump, or ultimately due to climate change and Donald Trump. And if nothing else, Brad, this is why I sometimes like to bring some of these issues to the table, because it is absolutely crucial that people exercise some level of discernment, and I hope that they can tune to us, if nothing else, to recognize that we want to try to be a trusted source for news and information from a biblical point of view.
We do, and it's so important to continue on that path. We've been doing this broadcast for, we're coming up on 50 years here pretty quick, and that's an incredible track record of truth-telling from a biblical point of view, speaking into our culture and making sure we know what's going on. That's a very important part of Point of View.
Let's, if we can, hear from some of our listeners.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View has been a big tool in helping me work through what I believe and understand why I believe it, and given me the ability to argue for it and to defend it.
I am increasingly dismayed at not only the slanted coverage that mainstream media provides, but the lack of coverage. If I hadn't listened to Point of View, I mean, I know people who don't even know there's a difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells, and I wouldn't have known if I had not listened to your show. And I give it to you guys, but I'm going to increase that amount because I think you guys are so important.
I want you to think, what would we do if we didn't have Point of View? Give something to Point of View to make sure we don't lose this wonderful voice. And thanks again for what you do.
To protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
I do appreciate Point of View and what you folks are doing. You really are doing a great job to educate, to help Christian folks do a better job to honor Christ in all that we do.
Point of View Truth Team.
You know, one of the things we've said before is not only are you supporting the radio program, which you're hearing right now, but all the material that we've posted on the website. For example, we have articles, two having to do with the BLM movement. We have one on the United States of Socialism, which is this book by Dinesh D'Souza. And this, as a matter of fact, a copy I went out and bought because I was so impressed I want to have my own copy to mark up and use as well. We have one on big tech censorship, which we just mentioned a few minutes ago with Scott Atlas. And then a lot of people have said, how should I think about this issue of Netflix? You know, I don't have Netflix, but I know a lot of our listeners do. Yes. And as a result, they hear about this program called Cuties, which seems to be talking about the sexualization of children. Where's Dr. Dobson and the Attorney General Commission on Pornography now that we need it? Because I have not watched it, but we've now interviewed some individuals that have. And they say that even when they tried to argue against you narrow-minded right-wing conservatives and other people that are concerned about this, we're really trying to do a public service, talking about the sexualization of children. But when you watch it, apparently it actually does sexualize children. Oh, goodness. And the kinds of things that Dr. Dobson used to work for, used to speak out against. And this is why you're starting to see liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats. I said Tulsi Gabbard the other day. She was one of the presidential candidates on the Democratic Party. She has dropped her Netflix account. So you're starting to see why. But some of you might say, well, what do I say? I don't want to watch it, but I don't know how to respond to that. That's one of the articles we've made available to you right there on Point of View. So that's what you're supporting when you support Point of View. Not only the radio, the video, we have the voters' guides up there right now. My Viewpoints commentary today about flipping the courts, all that.
Tons of information. Yeah. Absolutely tons. And to continue, we need to continue to have a voice. Frankly, for a Tuesday, we're a little bit behind the eight ball, Kerby, and need to hear from our friends to be on track. We have a match challenge on the table. It's almost $3,000 remaining, and I don't want to leave any of that money on the table. We need to hear from you because every dollar you give up to that amount will be doubled. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. 5151. You can also give at pointofview.net, and we'd love to have you come on at that $1 a day level to get the thumb drive, but that join the truth team, because that's the level of that and above that you can join in. 800-347-5151.
By the way, you might find yourself saying, I need something to write with, because when we get Dinesh D'Souza, he's going to be talking about a lot of issues, including his book and the upcoming film. We also have the trailer. So this will be the first opportunity you'll have a chance to see that. Just one more benefit by going to pointofview.net. As you go there, you can also click on the banner and give to us. Of course, you can also give us a call. You might want to call right now because you don't want to miss Dinesh D'Souza. 1-800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. Dinesh D'Souza with us right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
During this presidential election, we will likely hear pundits talking about flipping courts. Will a re-elected President Trump continue flipping courts, or will a President Biden be able to flip courts back? When Trump took office, Democratic appointees had a majority in 9 circuit courts. By contrast, Republican appointees only had a majority in 4 circuit courts. It's also worth mentioning that judges appointed by Republican presidents don't always render a conservative opinion, while nearly all judges appointed by Democratic presidents do render a liberal opinion. In the last few years, President Trump has managed to flip 3 more circuit courts. Those would be the 3rd Circuit Court of Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, the 11th Circuit Court of Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, and the 2nd Circuit Court of New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. If President Trump is reelected, it is likely he would be able to appoint judges that would eventually flip other circuit courts. That would include the 4th Circuit Court of Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the Carolinas, and the 9th Circuit Court of California and other western states. It is likely that many judges are waiting to see how the election turns out before deciding whether they might take senior status and retire. This allows judges to retire with their current salary, which they can receive even if they join a law firm for an additional salary. President Biden, along with Vice President Harris, would want to flip these circuit courts back to where they were when President Obama left office. They would want to push through nominees that would be very different from the ones put forward by the Trump administration over these last few years. The most lasting legacy of a president is who he puts on the court. This presidential election will determine which way these courts flip. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kerby's booklet, A Biblical View on Racism, go to viewpoints.info/racism. That's viewpoints.info/racism. Point of View Truth Team, unchanging truth in uncertain times.
We all know how rare it is to get the sort of cutting-edge biblical analysis of current events and cultural issues that you get every single day at Point of View. But Point of View can't do it without the support of listeners. I encourage you to, if you benefit from Point of View, show your appreciation by praying for the ministry and seriously consider financially supporting Point of View. The church needs what it provides.
Our good friend John Stone Street, and wanted you to have a chance to hear from him. We're in the midst of Truth Team 2020, unchanging truth in uncertain times, and it is our privilege to bring back to the microphone Dinesh D'Souza, individual that, of course, has had about 15 very well-received books produced in a number of films, but most importantly, we might spend a minute talking about the book we had a conversation about last time, The United States of Socialism, but also we have not only a link to his website, a trailer for the upcoming film Trump Card, which comes out next month, and that is something else you want to know about. Dinesh D'Souza, always great to have you on the program.
It's a real pleasure.
You know, you have been posting all sorts of things on Instagram, Facebook, and all the rest, and we are just coming from a conversation about everything from the fires in the West and whether that's really due to climate change to the peace treaty signing today and a number of other issues. And I think it just brings us back to one of the reasons why you write your books and why you do your films. If you're depending upon the mainstream media to tell you the truth about these issues, you're just going to go lacking so much news and information. And I must say that people sometimes say, where do you get your ideas? Well, I get a lot of them from Dinesh D'Souza, because you'll find something I hadn't seen, and I pass it on to our listeners. So I want to thank you for the ministry that you've had all those years.
Well, thank you. You know, I had a dismaying realization the other day that we don't really have a media in the true sense of the term in the country anymore. And here's what I mean. When we think of the media and when we think of the First Amendment, for example, which protects freedom of the press, we rarely think about what does it mean to have a press. Well, what it means to have a press is to have a group of people who are detached from the two political parties, who are truly independent in the critical sense, who are not only going to do, investigation or inquiry, but are going to use discrimination, which is to say critical judgment, in helping us to make sense of what is true, what is partly true, what is not true at all. And I realized that there is no one in the culture in a systematic or institutional way performing this task. Today, when we think of once respected organizations like the New York Times or CBS, they're no longer doing this. They see themselves now, I think, as partisans in a cause. They're not above the fray. They're in the fray. They will selectively transform information. They will not report news that is inconvenient. They will protect their own side while attacking the other side for doing exactly the same thing. And so all of this makes you realize that, look, it's one thing to have a propaganda wing of the left or the Democratic Party, but it should be labeled as such. We should think of it as such.
Well, and one of the things I want to give you credit for is certainly with Obama's America and many of the other films that you've done, you have actually been able to dig in. And let's talk about one of the places where you've been able to dig into the history and background of the vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris. And that's the kind of investigative reporting that I would have expected from 60 Minutes, 2020, or others. And really, if it weren't for Dinesh D'Souza, I don't think most people would know anything about the slavery background of some of the ancestors of the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party.
Yes, I think the reason this is significant is because when when Biden said, I'm going to appoint a woman, and of course later he decided, I'm going to appoint a woman of color, let's think about what that means. What it means is that he's saying, I'm going to be claiming the mantle of sort of victimhood here in my vice presidential nominee. I'm going to pick someone of whom it can be said that they are moving, if you will, from the slave house to one step from the White House. That is the sort of moral drama behind this whole idea of the first woman, the first African American, and so on. So, of course, in that context, it's highly significant that Kamala Harris is descended directly, in a direct line, from one of the largest slave owners in Jamaica, a fellow named Hamilton Brown, who owned 5 plantations and well over 200 slaves. So when I point this out, in fact, first of all, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is the architect of the New York Times' famous or infamous 1619 Project, she implied Dinesh doesn't know what he's talking about. There was obviously a lot of rape on the plantation, and that's obviously how Kamala Harris comes to have a white ancestor. Well, no, because there's a genealogical chart that I produced that showed very clearly that Kamala Harris is descended from a free woman of color. Who married one of the descendants of the white slave owner. So in any case, I think that your point stands, which is to say these people are so lazy that they don't even bother to do any original legwork. They don't even bother to check the sources that I provide. They just blurt out as if they're know-it-alls. Oh, Dinesh has gotten it wrong, and they're forced to admit that I didn't get it wrong, and then they pretend like it never happened. So we're now in phase 3. Let's pretend like it never happened. And so, I just watched this in amazement and thinking to myself, what really happened to critical discussion and critical debate in this country?
Well, some of it happened on the college campus, and I won't spend too much time on it, but I've watched some of the YouTube videos over the years where people will ask you questions, sometimes hostile professors. You'll give a very articulate answer, and then all of a sudden they start looking at their shoes because they recognize that you have more information, or in some cases they will vilify you but refuse to debate you. And I can remember a time not so long ago where I was able to do a lot of debates on college campuses, sometimes in ethics, lots of times in questions of origins and others. Those days are pretty much gone, aren't they, Dinesh?
They are. They are rarer and rarer on the campus, and they virtually disappeared from the larger culture. In one of my earlier films, Death of a Nation, I talk about the deep ties between the Democratic left and the fascist movements of Italy. FDR was a big admirer of Mussolini. Mussolini favorably reviewed FDR's book. Even the Nazis modeled their Nuremberg laws on the democratic laws of the Jim Crow South. So I have all this in the movie. It's incontestable. I have unimpeachable sources. But if you look at reviews of my movie by these professional critics, they'll say things like, D'Souza makes the simplistic move of saying that the Democrats are Nazis. Now, I don't say that. Obviously, the Democrats aren't Nazis. I'm actually excavating historical ties between the left and the Nazi movement, which saw itself on the left. After all, it's called the National Socialist Movement, and how these two movements sort of traded ideas and policies back and forth. And this is all right there in the record. But by drawing a complete caricature of my views, it makes it easy to dismiss. I try very hard not to do that. So in my book, United States of Socialism, I describe what the socialists say and what they think. But I always try to do it in such a way, I say to myself, if I'm describing AOC or Bernie Sanders, I want to summarize in a view that if they were sitting across from me on a chair and they looked at it, they would go, yeah, that's what I believe. I want to fairly summarize what the other guy thinks before proceeding to analyze and criticize it.
Well, and again, I might just point out, I've got a copy of your book here. You got page upon page upon page of appendices and endnotes and all sorts of other issues. And so when we come back from the break, I want to just briefly talk about a few things that I've really enjoyed about the United States of Socialism, but then get into Trump Card because it's an expose of the socialist issue, as well as some of the corruption and things that are taking place in the political movement. But we need to take a break. And just before we do so, Brad Fisk with us. And Brad, let's, if we can, remind people that as they're listening to Dinesh D'Souza, the best time to actually call us is while we're at a break, and that's where they can help us meet this need. Last time I heard, we're getting close to finishing off the actual match amount, but any individuals calling right now can help us put us over the top, right?
They can. We do this twice a year. We call it the Truth Team Week, and it's an opportunity for you to link arms with us and allow us to continue doing what we're doing, hearing excellent interviews like we're in the middle of right now, and it can't happen unless you help us fund our operational budget. We do it twice a year, and we're asking you to give $1 a day or more. You'll be able to join the Truth Team and receive a free gift and some other things. You can learn about that in a few minutes. But in the meantime, here's the phone number, 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Could we hear from 8 of you during this break? And please be as generous as you can when you give. And also you can give on the website at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Dinesh D'Souza. Next month, the Trump Card is coming out, the movie. We have the trailer there. We also have a link to the book. No doubt you should be able to find United States of Socialism in your local bookstore, but we also have a link there so you can get it in hardback and Kindle. And so all those resources are available, but that's why we need to have you call right now. 1-800-351-1212. 1-800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
Have you seen the new book, In Defense of Looting? Yep, the author says that theft can be a really good thing. Oh, except for theft of the writer's intellectual property. There's a warning against that right inside the book. Steal from thee, not from me. NPR even did an interview with the author, helping spread this mental virus to countless others. Think of Point of View Radio as a vaccine against such things. When you support Kerby Anderson and the rest of the team, you're saying we need unchanging truth in these uncertain times. You're saying that right is right, wrong is wrong. You're providing an alternative to the distortions and outright lies of so many media sources in our day. Don't let fake news go unopposed. Join the Truth Team now by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You're listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation with Dinesh D'Souza. Let me just mention, in just a minute, we're going to talk about the new film Trump Card. But for a second, let me, if I can, talk about one of the most significant insights that I thought was in your book, United States of Socialism. And that is, when I was in graduate school, I remember we had to read Adam Smith, and he certainly talks about the efficiency of the free market. Matter of fact, we even were supposed to read The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which I always thought was strange because even though he's a professor of moral philosophy, he never really talked about the moral justification for capitalism, which is, of course, what a lot of our socialist friends, I put that in quotes, like Bernie Sanders and AOC use. And Dinesh, in the book, Brad, was really talking about the fact that really socialism is not the same as the free market, because the free market, in a sense, allows everybody to be a voter. We can only vote every 2 or 4 years. But the bottom line is, every day you're a consumer, you're voting with your dollars.
That's right.
And I just think that is so powerful, because if we really believe in a representative democracy, one of the arguments, Dinesh, you make in the book is that you can choose between Coke or New Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper or Fox over MSNBC, or you can get an iPhone or another cell phone. And in a sense, if you believe in popular participation and democratic consent, really the argument you make in the book is a powerful argument. And I think it's about time for other people to read your book and recognize that when we don't defend the moral basis of capitalism, we give up a lot of ground, don't we?
Yes. It is not sufficient to defend the effectiveness or efficiency of capitalism. It's important to defend also the justice of it and the fairness of it, that capitalism allocates rewards to people in proportion to what they are due. Now, the left says that they don't want the old sort of authoritarian socialism of the past. They want democratic socialism. And their argument is that socialism gets its credibility from the idea of democracy, from the fact that people are exercising their consent. And the argument that I make in my book is that precisely by that standard, the standard set by the left, capitalism is vastly more democratic than socialism. Why? Because in socialism, first of all, you vote periodically, occasionally, once every couple of years, if that. In capitalism, you vote not only every day, but many times a day. And in fact, everybody votes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, felons vote, children vote. Nobody's excluded from the voting process because everyone participates in the market. And you vote with your hard-earned dollars, so it costs you something to vote. Think about it. In democratic capitalism, voting is free. And that's why for a lot of people, hey, if it's raining, I'm not going to go vote, because it doesn't mean that much one way or the other. But in capitalism, you're not going to part with $1 unless you think you're getting at least $1's worth from the other guy.
So again, about 280 pages. That's just one of the great insights there. Again, I always like to compliment you, and people say, where do you get some of your ideas? I give you full credit in a Viewpoints commentary I wrote recently on that, because a lot of that comes from the book United States of Socialism, which now transitions into Trump Card. We have a link so that people can pre-order the DVD, but tell us what is happening because of COVID-19. We're so used to going into the theaters and watching a Dinesh D'Souza movie, but what's happening this time?
Well, I was very excited to release Trump Card in the theater. We had made arrangements to have it come out in over 1,000 theaters nationwide in August. But then I realized, wow, you know, too many theaters are closed. In some states, they're closed completely. In other states, there's a lot of limitations. And if we came out in the theaters, then the DVD or the video on demand would come very close to the election. So the bottom line of it is a lot of people would be frustrated and not be able to see the movie before the election. So I made the decision to just release the movie to video on demand directly. So it's going to be on Apple iTunes. It'll be on Amazon Prime, on Google, on Dish Network. There'll be all kinds of ways to get it, and you can watch it on any device. So October 9th is the big day. But the DVD is available for pre-order now, and you can get that right from Amazon or Target or Walmart. It's available all over the place. So I'm really excited. I think this is actually the right way to release this film in the months leading up to November.
So again, we have all those links, and I would encourage you, first of all, to get it for yourself if you want a DVD. Second of all, there are probably a lot of people in your neighborhood that would come over to watch a film and just say, we're going to have just kind of popcorn and we're going to watch this film, and you would have been able to see it in the theater, but you can come here. And I just think it's a great opportunity to begin to focus on that. And so that is all available at our website, pointofview.net. Of course, it's also available at Dinesh D'Souza.com. Sometimes you don't know how to spell it, but we have that link there as well. But Dinesh, I just had to also focus on the subject of media bias. I've known you for a long time, and I remember when illiberal education came out, it appeared in The Atlantic. Now, we've been talking about The Atlantic because of Jeffrey Goldberg for the last couple of days, and I think you have a great perspective on the fact that that magazine, which used to be a very prestigious one, is now very influenced by the widow of Stephen Jobs. And so now we're starting to see all of these hit pieces out here against Donald Trump. And for an individual that used to publish with Atlantic and saw that as a prestigious magazine, I'd like to have you talk about what it is now, because it's kind of a shadow of its former self, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think most people realize that the so-called, prestige magazines never were able to kind of make it in the market. So typically in the past, they would have some literary guy who inherited money, let's say. The New Republic was owned by a guy named Marty Peretz. The Atlantic, I think, was at one time owned by a prominent industrialist. But nevertheless, these guys left the magazines alone. They allowed fiercely independent editors to shape the magazine. The magazine typically would be feisty intellectually, perhaps on the left, but open to occasional points of view from the other side. The Atlantic ran a massive excerpt of Illiberal Education, really my first major book, and it launched my whole career. But what's happened now is that, first of all, newspapers that used to be profitable, like the Washington Post, are now in the same position as the Atlantic. They need wealthy donors to essentially subsidize them because they can't make it in the market. So Jeff Bezos now owns the Washington Post. A Mexican billionaire has a lot of money in the New York Times. Steve Jobs' widow now owns The Atlantic. And these people are hands-on. They call up the editor and go, hey, listen, I've been in touch with the Biden campaign. They are very concerned about the military write-in vote. I've got a big story that they want to drop on you. So these magazines, again, have ceased to be magazines in the sense that we understand a magazine. They're not independent. Jeff Goldberg is not a real journalist. He's more like a press operative for the Democratic left, and he takes orders from powerful, wealthy donors who pay his salary. So it's an illusion to pick up The Atlantic now and think it's the same magazine that I wrote for in 1991. It's been difficult for me to make that emotional adjustment, but I just have to realize that some of these magazines aren't really magazines anymore.
Well, that's why I wanted you to say that, because one of the reasons we're doing Truth Team is to encourage people to support us. The theme is unchanging truth in uncertain times. And over the last couple of days, it's been hard to keep track of all of the various hit pieces, whether it's in The Atlantic or whether it's Ken Woodward or whether it's Michael Cohen. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But in some respects, what you're telling us to do is to exercise some level of discernment. So I know that you appreciate point of view. And what would you say to some of our listeners as we come to them today, asking for them to support this ministry?
I would say that this is a very unique show, and I say this as someone who does a lot of media and someone who deals with a lot of different interviewers and a lot of different formats. I always genuinely look forward to talking to you, Kerby, because I just feel that the tone is elevated. The questions that you ask are intelligent. If you discuss a book, you've actually read the book. And not only read the book, you've thought about the book. You have original things to say about it, which brings out the best in what I have to say in response. And so it's just a qualitatively different experience for me to do your show. Normally, I don't even expect people who interview me to read the book. If they don't read the book, I still hope that they ask intelligent questions. if they don't ask intelligent questions, I hope that they ask questions that allow me to say intelligent things. With you, I don't have to have those low expectations because I expect the best and I always get the best.
Well, we're looking forward to the next time we get a chance to see you. I think you'll be in studio perhaps with us, and we want everybody to know about this book, which I think very highly of, The United States of Socialism, and of course Trump Card. And I'll let you go because I know you have some other things to do. And Brad, just before we wind down this segment, we are still challenging people to consider what they might do to support this ministry.
We are indeed. It's a time for you to join the Truth Team at $1 a day or more. Be as generous as you can when you call, and please stand with us. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Or you can give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net. And we are just under $4,000 away from getting today's goal handled. So we're looking for some help. A lot of people calling and giving very generously.
And perhaps one of you could be an individual that gives $1,000
Yes.
or pledges. We would greatly appreciate that. Again, that number, 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team on changing truth in uncertain times.
It has been about 25 years since God providentially led me to Point of View when I did not even know it existed. During this time, I have shared numerous taped programs with my family and incorporated the Outlook magazine and other articles into the homeschool curriculum I used in teaching our 5 children Back 25 years ago, I had to put a big box radio with a recorder strategically in a corner so that I could hear that message. Point of View receives no government funding, for which I am grateful. It is therefore my honor, privilege, and responsibility to support this organization of tremendous self-sacrificing people on a monthly financial basis and to put courage into them through letters and specific prayers as they have become like family to me.
So again, great testimony from one of our listeners, and we still have room for you before we wind down for the day. Let me just give you a program note that Max Lucado will be with us tomorrow.
Oh, right.
Some of you have been dealing with the issue of anxiety. Also, the new book, You're Not Alone. So we'll be talking about that with him. Don Blythe will be with us later in the week. Of course, we have Gary Bauer. I've been mentioning him a couple of times, and he's at that signing of the peace treaty today. And also Phil Robertson, Duck Dynasty. You never know what he's going to say, but that'll be kind of fun. And by Friday, of course, we'll have Benedexter Kelly Shackelford. And, of course, we have Brad Fisk with us right now. And I thought I might just mention for a minute that we've been talking about this flash drive that actually has information about culture and family, about the economy, a new section on education, a new section on evangelism, a section on healthcare, section on life issues, one on politics and religious freedom. And I look down under politics, we have the entire program we did with Dinesh D'Souza on the United States of Socialism. We have an entire program we did with Michael Brown on Christians and Trump. So a good illustration of all that. And then, of course, a section at the end there on theology and apologetics. So lots of great material. But as we mentioned as well, one of the videos, I think you've had a chance to see this now, is on the election, what this election might mean in 2020.
You know, Kerby, I just listened to it before the show today, and you give an overview, a summary of the election time that's coming up here that was absolutely brilliantly done. And I'm not a paid endorsement. I'm just saying what I really thought. And the good news and the bad news. The bad news is you can't get this anywhere else but on this thumb drive that we are giving as a gift for anybody who gives $1 a day or more, $360 for the year. The good news is you're going to hear a really, really fine presentation about the elections coming up.
Let me give you a preview real quickly, and that is, of course, we recognize we have a presidential election, but then we also are talking about some very important elections for the United States Senate. Matter of fact, my commentary today is about the fact that we have now seen Donald Trump has been able to flip some courts, and so the Senate looks at treaties. The Senate looks at the confirmation of individuals for the federal bench. That would be the district courts, the appeals courts, and of course, 2 on the Supreme Court. And we have something very unusual, not only 33 Senate elections, but then 2 special elections. So we have 35 Senate elections. Never had that many before. And that will determine whether or not more of those individuals that look at the Constitution as it was originally written, or whether you have people sort of make it up as you go along kind of mindset, and that would flip more courts, which we talk about today on the Viewpoints commentary. But then you also have 435 races for the House of Representatives and where that might go in the future. In addition to that, you actually have 13 governor's races. And Brad, 43 out of the 50 states have state legislative races as well. So we have 99 legislatures, if you will, Nebraska only having a unicameral. And so 86 of those 99 are also up for grabs. Wow. Then you work your way down, and then you're talking about the state boards of education. You're talking about city council. You're talking about mayor's races. Yeah. More than 30 different elections. And I try to help you understand a little bit about how crucial those are. And we've heard a few of our callers and other individuals and guests all through these last couple of weeks say they are convinced that this is the most important election in American history. And I think that we've used that phrase a little bit too often in the past, because this time I really think that it is.
I agree. Absolutely agree. Let me tell you where we're at right now. We're about $3,500 away from being at our goal for today, Tuesday. And so we got very little time left, about 4 or 5 minutes in the program, but we'll still be answering phones afterwards. So here's the phone number, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. That's pointofview.net.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View has been a big tool in helping me work through what I believe and understand why I believe it, and given me the ability to argue for it and to defend it.
I am increasingly dismayed at not only the slanted coverage that mainstream media provides, but the lack of coverage. If I hadn't listened to Point of View, I know people who don't even know there's a difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells, and I wouldn't have known if I had not listened to your show. And I give it to you guys, but I'm going to increase that amount because I think you guys are so important.
I want you to think, what would we do if we didn't have Point of View? Give something to Point of View to make sure we don't lose this wonderful voice. And thanks again for what you do.
To protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
I do appreciate Point of View and what you folks are doing. You really are doing a great job to educate and to help Christian folks do a better job to honor Christ in all that we do.
Point of View Truth Team.
You know, we talk about some of the other things that you're supporting in addition to the radio program. My commentary today is about flipping courts. And when Donald Trump took office, Democratic appointees, those appointed by Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, had a majority in 9 of the circuit courts. And there was only a majority of Republican appointees in 4. But in the last few years, interesting enough, President Trump has flipped 3 of those courts.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so, and what's so interesting is that if he is reelected, a lot of people say, well, what would that mean? It probably would try at least flip 2 or 3 more. And those are very significant courts because some of them, like the 4th Circuit or the 9th Circuit, have been much more hostile to conservative ideas, religious liberty, and the rest. And so some people say, what's at stake? Well, what's at stake politically has to do with things like the courts. And one of the things that outlives every president is the people that that particular president actually puts on the court because they serve for life with good behavior. So that's one of the issues. One of the others, if you go to our Take Action item right now, you see that we have our iVoter guide. And over the next couple of weeks, in addition to what we talk about on the flash drive, a lot of people saying, I'm going to need to know information about other individuals that I may want to vote for because I want people to be registered to vote and then vote intelligently. So those are the kinds of services that we provide to you. And if you value those, I hope we'll hear from you. We're going off the air in just a minute. 800-347-5151. 1-800-347-5151.
We're down to $2,900 to get to goal. So thanks for those who just called. Come on, don't give up, you guys. If you I'd like to hear from brand new donors who have never given before. How about 8 of you checking in at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Don't
forget, we have Max Lucado on tomorrow. We're going to talk about anxiety, that you're not alone, and all sorts of great material. If you want to see some of the material we've talked about today, it's on the website, pointofview.net. You can give there as well, pointofview.net. But even though we're going off the air, we'll still answer the phones, 800-347-5151. Brad, thank you for being with us. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow right here on Point of View.
2020 was supposed to be the year of sharper vision, but from the smoke of wildfires to the smoke of burning cities and a seemingly endless flood of concern over coronavirus, let's just say that almost no one is seeing clearly right now what our future will be. But when you have fuzzy vision, you get glasses. You do something to help you see the world as it really is. When you see chaos in our land, you do something, you vote, you anchor yourself in unchanging truth in uncertain times. You can provide that for countless people over the coming week by joining with many others as members of the Point of View Truth Team. The something you can do right now is become a monthly partner in our work. Don't settle for fuzziness. Provide our land with clarity by visiting pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. unchanging truth in uncertain times. Point of View Radio. pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.